Ever imagine a world guided by unity, justice, and peace? Well, that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
How the Baha'i faith aims to make that a reality.
Okay.
Through its unique system, the Baha'i Administrative Order. Our source today
All right.
is an article called The Role of the Baha'i Administrative Order in Baha'i Law's World Order. A means, not an end.
Okay.
Which really highlights how this system, it isn't about rigid structures, but about serving humanity.
Right.
So we'll explore how this system puts lofty ideals into action, the dangers of turning it into an idol, and the vital role of individual thinking within this framework.
It's fascinating how the Baha'i Administrative Order strives to be a tool for positive change. It seeks to put Baha'u'llah's teachings into action, going beyond just words to bring about real change in the world.
So it's like a blueprint for a new society.
You could say that. Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, described it as the nucleus and pattern of a future world commonwealth.
A world commonwealth, that's a bold vision.
Yeah.
But how does it actually work?
At its core, the Baha'i Administrative Order emphasizes unity, collaboration, and promoting justice and equity. It's about creating a society where these principles are woven into the very fabric of how we interact and make decisions.
That makes sense. But the article also mentions this intriguing term, institutional idolatry.
Right.
What does that mean in this context?
It's a crucial point. Even though the Baha'i faith intentionally avoids hierarchies and clergy, there's a risk of turning any system, even a well-intentioned one, into an idol. In this case, institutional idolatry happens when we start prioritizing the administrative order itself over the principles it's meant to serve.
I see. So it's like valuing the letter of the law over the spirit.
Yes.
Or focusing more on the structure than on the people it's meant to help.
Exactly. And the article highlights 3 specific tendencies that can lead to this problem.
Okay, I'm curious. Let's break those down.
All right.
What's the first one?
The first tendency is delegating personal responsibility. This happens when we rely too heavily on institutions to interpret guidance for us, rather than engaging with the teachings ourselves and developing our own understanding.
So rather than wrestling with the spiritual principles and figuring out how they apply to our lives,
Yes.
we just wait for someone else to tell us what to do.
That's one way it can manifest, and that can really hinder our individual growth and understanding.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It reminds me of situations where people might be afraid to question authority or rely too much on experts without forming their own opinions.
Right.
What's the second tendency?
The second danger is perceiving administrative figures as infallible. We have to remember that while the institutions may be divinely guided, individuals are not perfect.
Right.
Maintaining a healthy sense of questioning and critical thinking is vital, even when interacting with those in administrative roles.
So it's not about blindly following
Right.
or accepting everything without question.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that everyone, including those in administrative roles, is on a learning journey. We should respect the institution and its processes, but also remember that everyone is capable of making mistakes.
That's a really important point. It's about finding that balance between respecting authority and using our own judgment.
Yeah.
What's the third pitfall we should be aware of?
The third tendency is institutionalizing rigidity.
Okay.
This is when we become so focused on rules and procedures that we forget about the human beings at the heart of it all.
So it becomes more about upholding the system than serving the people the system is meant to serve.
Yes, and the article highlights that this has been a problem throughout history.
Oh, I'd love to hear about some of those historical examples. It helps to put things in perspective.
Well, think about times when religious leaders have prioritized dogma over compassion, leading to exclusion and suffering. Or situations where communities become so fixated on following rules that they lose sight of the bigger picture, love, kindness, and understanding.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's something we see happening in all sorts of institutions, not just religious ones.
Yeah.
It's like the system takes on a life of its own.
Right.
And the original purpose gets lost.
Absolutely. Baha'u'llah himself cautioned against this, saying that any edifice built on such a foundation will become increasingly unstable the higher it is built. He emphasized the need for flexibility and adaptation.
That's powerful imagery.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid falling into these traps? How do we make sure the administrative order remains a tool for good and doesn't become rigid and unyielding?
That's where the principle of independent investigation of truth comes into play. It's essential both for personal belief and for engaging with the administrative order in a healthy way.
So we're not just blindly following the rules or accepting interpretations without question.
Exactly. It starts with studying the writings of Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the Universal House of Justice firsthand. We should go directly to the source and develop our own understanding, rather than relying solely on secondhand interpretations.
So just like we're doing with this article,
Yes.
examining the source material for ourselves.
It's about actively engaging with the teachings and not being passive recipients of information.
But it's not just about individual study, right? We're not
Yeah.
meant to be isolated in our understanding.
That's right. Independent investigation of truth also involves engaging in meaningful consultation, sharing insights with others, refining our understanding, and learning from each other's perspectives.
So it's a dynamic process.
It is, and that's what keeps the system vibrant and evolving.
That makes sense, but I'm still a bit unclear about the role of institutions in all of this. If they're not supposed to be these rigid dictatorial entities, what are they actually there for?
Their primary role is to facilitate growth, not to dictate it.
Go.
They're there to support and guide, not control or impose.
Okay, so how does that play out in practice? What does it look like for individuals and communities?
There are several ways institutions can support growth. One key role is creating spaces where everyone feels empowered to participate and contribute their understanding of the teachings. It's about fostering a sense of ownership, not imposing a single interpretation.
So instead of delivering a lecture, it's more like facilitating a conversation.
That's a great way to put it. Another important role is supporting community development. Institutions can help communities identify their own needs and challenges, but it's about empowering them to find their own solutions, not imposing prepackaged answers from above.
So it's about building capacity for the community to solve its own problems and flourish organically.
Yes.
Not creating dependency on external solutions.
Precisely. And finally, institutions should be actively promoting a culture of humility and continuous learning, embracing the idea that we're all constantly evolving in our understanding, that there's always more to learn, and that mistakes are opportunities for growth.
That's a great point. It sounds like learning and growth are central to how the system functions. But do you have any personal examples of seeing this in action? Where the institution played this supportive role?
I do. Recently, I was involved in a community project addressing a complex social issue. Instead of assuming we knew the best approach, we created a space for open dialogue, inviting everyone in the community to share their perspectives and ideas. What emerged was a solution that none of us had initially envisioned.
Wow.
But it was far more effective because it was rooted in the lived experiences of the people most affected by the issue.
That's a fantastic example of how empowering people to contribute their own knowledge and experiences can lead to much better outcomes than top-down solutions. It sounds like the institutions provided the framework and support,
Right.
but the real innovation came from the community itself.
Exactly. And that's a perfect illustration of how this system is meant to work.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the article talks about specific roles within the Baha'i administrative order.
Right.
Can you shed some light on who auxiliary board members and counselors are and how they fit into this system?
Auxiliary board members and counselors are individuals appointed to inspire and support communities in their understanding and application of the Baha'i teachings.
So are they like authority figures?
Not exactly. They're more like facilitators and guides, offering insights, encouraging collaboration, or helping communities connect with resources. Think of them as mentors or advisors who empower individuals and communities to take ownership of their own spiritual and social development.
So they're there to nurture growth,
Right.
not to enforce rules or dictate interpretations.
Precisely.
It sounds like this whole system is built on the idea that everyone has something valuable to contribute.
That's a fundamental principle of the Baha'i faith. And it brings us to another crucial aspect of our discussion, the need to eliminate biases and prejudices.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Even with the best intentions, biases can creep in and influence our perceptions and actions.
Absolutely. And the article highlights some specific types of prejudice that can arise, even within a community that strives for unity.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are some of the biases that we need to be particularly vigilant about?
Well, one is cultural superiority.
Yep.
This can manifest as favoring one cultural expression or interpretation of the faith over others.
So instead of appreciating the beauty of diverse expressions, we start to think our way is the only right way.
Exactly. And that can create division and stifle the very unity the faith promotes.
It's a reminder that we need to be humble and open-minded, recognizing that there are many paths to truth and understanding. Are there other biases that we should be wary of?
Another pitfall is intellectual elitism, where academic or highly articulate expressions of faith are valued over simpler or more heartfelt ones.
So we might unconsciously create a hierarchy based on how eloquently someone can express their faith, rather than focusing on the sincerity and depth of their belief.
Yes, and that can lead to some voices being marginalized or feeling like they don't belong.
That's a really good point. We need to be mindful of creating inclusive spaces where everyone feels comfortable expressing their understanding, regardless of their background or education level. Are there any other biases we should be aware of?
The article also mentions resistance to change as a potential stumbling block.
Okay.
This can show up as clinging to familiar practices or interpretations, even when they no longer serve the community's needs or hinder its progress.
So even though change is a natural part of life and growth, we might sometimes resist it because it feels uncomfortable or challenges our existing beliefs.
That's right. We might fear losing what's familiar, even if holding on to it prevents us from embracing new possibilities and moving forward.
Right.
But the Baha'i teachings emphasize the importance of adaptability and being open to evolving in our understanding.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change. But we need to move beyond simply accepting change to embracing it as an opportunity for growth and progress. But how do we overcome these biases? It's easy to talk about them in theory, but what are some concrete strategies for individuals and communities?
One powerful tool is self-reflection.
Okay.
Regularly taking time to examine our own assumptions, motivations, and ingrained patterns of thinking can help us identify those hidden biases that might be influencing our thoughts and actions.
So it's like taking an honest inventory of our prejudices.
Right.
Even the ones we might not be consciously aware of.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual reflection.
No.
We also need to create a culture of mutual support within our communities where people feel safe to share their perspective, challenge assumptions, and engage in open, non-judgmental dialogue.
That sounds like a challenging but incredibly valuable endeavor.
Yeah.
It's about fostering an environment where we can learn and grow together,
Right.
even when we disagree or hold different perspectives.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And finally, continuous education is key. Regularly studying the writings, engaging with diverse perspectives, and staying open to new insights can help us break free from those ingrained patterns of thinking that can lead to prejudice and division.
It's about constantly expanding our understanding and challenging ourselves to see things from different angles. It sounds like this whole system is designed to embrace a dynamic process of growth, both individually and collectively.
That's a perfect way to capture the essence of the Baha'i administrative order. It's about aligning ourselves with Baha'u'llah's vision and recognizing that our understanding of that vision will continue to evolve.
This has been so insightful. It's clear that the administrative order is much more than just a set of rules or a hierarchical structure. It's a living system, constantly evolving and adapting to serve its ultimate purpose, the betterment of humanity.
You hit the nail on the head.
We've covered so much ground already, but we're just getting started. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the fascinating world of the Baha'i administrative order.
We've been exploring how the Baha'i administrative order strives to translate spiritual principles into action. But it's important to remember that this system isn't static.
You're right, it needs to be flexible to keep up with the ever-changing world.
Exactly. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, built in mechanisms for ongoing refinement and development.
So it's not just about following a set of rules.
Not at all. It's about engaging in a process of learning and adaptation guided by a few key principles.
I'm ready to learn more. What are those principles?
One of the most fundamental principles is consultation.
You mentioned that earlier, but I'd love to hear more about how it works in real life.
It's at the heart of decision-making in the Baha'i faith at every level, from the individual to the global.
So it's not just about leaders making all the decisions.
Definitely not. It's about creating spaces where everyone can contribute their perspectives and experiences.
Can you paint a picture of what that looks like?
Imagine a community trying to figure out how to best serve the needs of its youth. Instead of a small group coming up with a solution, they gather together, maybe in a study circle or a community meeting, and engage in a process of consultation.
So everyone gets to share their thoughts and ideas.
Exactly. The goal isn't to argue or debate, but to reach a unified understanding.
That sounds challenging, especially when people have different perspectives. How do you navigate that?
There are a few key principles that help guide the process. One is detachment.
Detachment. How does that work in a group setting?
It means sharing our thoughts with humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers, and being open to having our perspectives refined or even changed.
So letting go of our egos and approaching the conversation with a willingness to learn.
That's the idea. Another important principle is seeking truth, not victory.
So it's not about winning an argument or forcing your viewpoint on others.
Right. It's about collectively trying to find the best path forward, even if that means letting go of our own preconceived notions.
That requires a lot of maturity and a willingness to put the needs of the group ahead of your own ego.
It does, and it's a skill that's developed through practice.
So the more we engage in this kind of decision-making, the better we become at it.
Absolutely. And the benefits go beyond just making good decisions.
What other benefits are there?
Consultation fosters unity, strengthens relationships, and creates a sense of shared ownership over the outcomes.
Because everyone feels like they've been heard and that their contribution matters.
Precisely.
This is starting to make a lot of sense to me. Consultation acts as the engine that keeps the whole system dynamic and responsive to the needs of the community.
I like that analogy. It really captures the essence of consultation.
But a question popped into my head as you were talking. We discussed earlier the dangers of institutional idolatry and the importance of checks and balances, even in a system that emphasizes consultation and unity. How do you deal with the potential for abuse of power?
That's a very important question, and the Baha'i teachings address this directly.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One safeguard is the principle of independent investigation of truth, which encourages critical thinking and questioning assumptions, not just blindly following leaders.
So it's about empowering individuals to think for themselves and not simply accept things at face value.
That's a key part of it. Another crucial element is the emphasis on service and humility. In the Baha'i faith, leadership is not about power or prestige, but about selfless service to humanity.
So leaders are expected to put the needs of others before their own and not seek personal gain.
Exactly. And the institutions themselves are designed to promote accountability and transparency. There are mechanisms for addressing grievances, resolving conflicts, and ensuring that decisions are made fairly.
Could you give us an example of how that works?
Certainly think about how local spiritual assemblies are elected. These are the governing councils of local Baha'i communities, and they're elected annually through a secret ballot.
Is there any campaigning or nominations?
Nope. It's designed to ensure that the most qualified individuals are chosen based on their spiritual qualities and ability to serve the community, not their popularity or social standing.
That's fascinating. It sounds like a very different approach to elections than we see in the political world.
It is, and it reflects the core belief that leadership should be based on service, not self-interest.
So we've got consultation as the driving force, independent investigation of truth, and a focus on service and humility as safeguards against abuses of power. And we've got a structure designed to keep everything transparent and accountable. Is there anything else we should know about how this administrative order functions?
It operates at multiple levels.
What do you mean by that?
We've been talking mostly about the local level, but there are also national and international institutions that play important roles.
Can you tell us more about those?
At the national level, each country with a significant Baha'i population has a national spiritual assembly.
So they coordinate the activities of the Baha'i community within that country.
That's one of their roles. They also provide guidance and support to the local communities and represent the Baha'i faith to the wider society.
So they act as a bridge between the local communities and the global Baha'i community.
Exactly. And then at the international level, we have the Universal House of Justice.
The one based in Haifa, Israel.
Yes. It's the supreme governing body of the Baha'i faith and is elected every 5 years by delegates from all the national spiritual assemblies around the world.
What kind of responsibilities does it have?
It guides the development of the Baha'i faith, interprets the sacred writings, legislates on matters not explicitly addressed in those writings, and addresses the spiritual and social needs of humanity as a whole.
That sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is. And the Universal House of Justice takes its responsibilities very seriously.
So we have local, national, and international institutions all working together to support the growth and development of the Baha'i community and contribute to the betterment of humanity.
That's the vision.
It's a pretty remarkable system when you think about it. And it makes me realize that we've been discussing the Baha'i administrative order as a structure or system, but at its core, it's really a set of principles, a way of thinking and being in the world.
I think you've hit on something important. It's not just about managing a religious community. It's about tapping into a potential within each of us for unity, justice, and progress.
That's a great point. This system, with its focus on consultation, unity, and continuous learning, has the potential to transform not just individuals, but entire societies.
It's about creating a culture where collaboration and justice are lived realities.
This has been an incredible exploration, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling similarly inspired and perhaps a little overwhelmed.
It's definitely a lot to take in.
So as we shift gears and start to wrap up our deep dive, I'm curious, what's the most important takeaway you want people to remember?
I think it's this. The Baha'i administrative order, while rooted in a specific religious context, offers a powerful model for how we can organize ourselves, make decisions, and build a better world. Its emphasis on consultation, unity, justice, and continuous learning are principles that transcend religious boundaries and can be applied in every sphere of human life.
It's a gift to humanity, a set of tools for building a brighter future together.
I love that. And I hope our listeners will take some time to reflect on how these principles might be applied in their own lives and communities.
That's a fantastic challenge.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this question. How might the principles of the Baha'i Administrative Order consultation, unity, justice, and continuous learning inspire you to create positive change in your own corner of the world? Think about that. We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive into the Baha'i Administrative Order. We've been unpacking this incredible system, this Baha'i Administrative Order.
Right.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
Right. How does this apply to someone listening right now? That's a great question.
Because this isn't just some theoretical concept, right?
Exactly. The Baha'i Administrative Order isn't just for folks in official roles.
Yep.
It can influence how we interact with others, make decisions, and contribute to the world around us.
So it impacts how we live our lives, period.
Absolutely. Take the principle of consultation, for example. It's a skill we can apply anywhere, in our families, at work, in our communities.
So instead of getting stuck in power struggles, we can approach those situations with a spirit of collaboration.
That's the idea. It can lead to stronger relationships, better decisions, and a greater sense of unity and purpose.
It's taking these lofty spiritual principles and making them practical tools for everyday life.
And the same goes for the principle of independent investigation of truth.
Okay.
It's not just about studying religious texts, it's about cultivating a critical, inquiring mind.
So questioning assumptions, digging deeper, not just taking things at face value.
Exactly. Whether it's evaluating information online, making decisions about our health, or forming opinions about world events, that ability to think for yourself is essential.
Especially in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information.
It's like we need that inner compass now more than ever.
And this system, with its emphasis on reason, consultation, and independent thinking, helps us develop that inner compass.
You got it. It's about becoming more discerning, more informed, and taking responsibility for our own understanding.
It's fascinating how we started talking about a religious system,
Right.
but ended up discussing essential life skills for navigating the modern world.
Well, the principles at the heart of the Baha'i Administrative Order are universal. They're applicable to all aspects of human life.
So even if someone isn't Baha'i, they can still benefit from these principles.
Absolutely. They can help us build stronger families, more harmonious communities, and ultimately a more just and peaceful world.
It's almost like Baha'u'llah offered a blueprint, not just for a new religion, but for a new way of being human,
Right.
a new way of interacting and building a better future together.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? And that's what makes this administrative order so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about managing a community. It's about unleashing the potential within each of us for unity and progress.
I'm having a light bulb moment here. We've been discussing the administrative order as a system,
Yeah,
but it's really about a set of principles,
right.
a way of thinking and being that can transform not just individuals, but society as a whole.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where collaboration, justice, and continuous learning are woven into the fabric of our lives.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling inspired and maybe a little overwhelmed by all this expansive thinking.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure, but it's worth reflecting on.
So as we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway you hope listeners walk away with?
The Baha'i Administrative Order, while rooted in a specific religious context, offers a powerful model for how we can organize ourselves and build a better world. Its principles, consultation, unity, justice, and continuous learning transcend boundaries and can be applied in every aspect of human endeavor.
It's a set of tools for creating a brighter future, a future built on collaboration and understanding. What a thought to leave our listeners with.
I hope they'll take some time to reflect on how these principles might show up in their own lives and communities.
That's a great challenge. To our listeners, we leave you with this question. How might the principles of the Baha'i administrative order inspire you to create positive change in your own corner of the world? Think about it, and join us next time for another deep dive into something fascinating.